about BookTube. It's Tuesday, and that means Tag Tuesday, when we all set aside all of our more pressing duties and do tags. And I have a tag for you today, and I also have a challenge, not for you, but for myself. I am trying to make videos today that are in a responsible amount of time, not 45-minute monstrosities that just go on forever and ever. I've done a couple of videos already because I love your faces. I can't stand not talking to you, so I can't. These people on BookTube who schedule their video for every other Tuesday and are okay with that, I just don't understand how that happens. But I have a tag today, and it will be the real challenge. A quick little mail haul, a quick little book discussion, fine. But doing a tag in an efficient amount of time, we're going to try. And this is the latest in a great series of tags, the alphabet tags that Jim at Jim's Books and Reading and Stuff is doing. We're all the way up to the letter N. And there are a lot of prompts, because I'm going to do all the extra prompts as well, and I'll list them down below. So we're going to try and get through this quickly. Okay? Prompt number 1 is N is for New York. What is the last book you read that was set in New York, either city or state? This kind of question has come up a few times on these tags. I absolutely do not remember. I absolutely do not. I racked my brains. I even looked at my the problem is I have a library here at Hyde Cottage, and I have one shelf for the workbooks that I do, which will almost always be the last thing I read. And by that I mean books in the current month and a couple of stacks of books for upcoming months. And I actually stared at that stack for a while to try and remember if any of them were memorably set in New York. Drew a total blank. And the problem with stuff that isn't that, stuff that I get at the Brattle, used books, is that they scatter to the winds as soon as they get here. I read them, or read a bunch of them, scatter them to the winds, and so I don't know where to look for it. So I'm going to have to pass on the very first question. Then we have N is for 1984. Which novel is closer to our reality in your opinion, 1984 or Brave New World? I know that Orwellian is used often to describe our present day, but I'm going to agree with Jim that it's Brave New World. Although I also want to stress you should definitely read both of those books. I know they're brought up in cultural conversation far more often than they're brought up as reading experiences, but you'll enjoy both of them. We don't want to have too many of those kinds of digressions. That's what gets us to 45 minutes. The next prompt is N is for nightmare. Has any book you read given you nightmares? No. No. The next prompt is N is for nautical and navy. What was the last seafaring book you read? There's a book called Gray Seas Under by the author Farley Moat, who's famous for Never Cry Wolf and a whole bunch of other things. But this is a book about a sort of a commercial tugboat, a garbage hauler, a freight hauler, during the lead up to World War II and then during World War II. And I really, really liked it. I really, really liked it. Liked it a lot more than a lot of other Farley Moat stuff that I've read. So I'm kind of surprised that I didn't really know it before now. I think I might have read an excerpt in a seafaring anthology, but I don't think I've ever read the whole book. So Gray Seas Under was quite good. Then N is for NetGalley. Do you use this or similar sites where you get free ebooks and e-arcs in an expectation that you will review the book? I do. I use NetGalley, but I don't use NetGalley the way I should. I'm a bad NetGalley user. I'm surprised they haven't booted me right off the service. On NetGalley, you sign up, you give them all the pertinent details about your bookish existence, and the level of that audience, the level of that engagement, generates the level of your access to the ebooks that they offer, which is a lot. They offer a lot. I have found, just in dealing with other booktubers over the last 5 years, that a passionate reader who has a booktube channel of even 200 subscribers will get access to a whole bunch of ebooks on NetGalley. I don't think you have to be a reviewer. I think they're mainly looking for word of mouth and free content because they want you to post a review either somewhere else that they can link to or on their site. That is, as the question says, that is kind of the arrangement here. You get this in exchange for responding to it. Because as we have learned, and you self-published authors out there will be nodding in agreement, I think, there's nothing harder for a book than getting noticed. You might think that the hardest part is writing a good book, but no, it's getting noticed. There's an ocean of books out there, an ocean. NetGalley wants to make sure that you uphold your end of the bargain. And oh my God, I have not. You can check on NetGalley the percentage of your books reviewed weighed against the percentage of books that you have actually requested and received. And mine is minuscule. It's like 1 or 2% out of 100. Ridiculous. In my own defense, and I have to assume that the powers that be at NetGalley at least know this, in my own defense, I talk about these books, quite a few of them a lot, on this channel, and I write actual printed reviews of them that are published in newspapers all over the country. So it's not that I take these things and just read them and then ponder on them in my heart. No, I am reviewing a lot of these books, but not, I don't think, in the way that NetGalley wants me to, and I keep meaning to fix that, but it's such an uphill battle now. If I were to add just a 2-sentence quick review of all the books that I have taken from NetGalley with them and have not reviewed, I would be at it for weeks. And I always want to say, somehow, can we right this wrong? Can we maybe just clear the slate? And clear the slate at the end of this year, and then I will review somehow in a visible way for NetGalley. I will review everything that I request and read after that. If we can just wipe the slate so that I don't have this horrible burden of like 200 books that I haven't written about. I think the only way I could do that would be to close out my NetGalley account and make a new one. And I just, that seems like such an A-bomb thing that I don't do it. But the answer to the question, so that we don't digress too much, my answer to the question is yes. I use NetGalley. It has saved my hide on quite a few occasions, and I do react critically to a huge number of those books. Maybe the solution is this channel. I have 4 friends who are professional YouTubers, 2 of whom are fairly wealthy professional YouTubers, and they have told me, why are you bothering to wonder whether or not NetGalley notices that you review anything for the Boston Globe? Why are you bothering to do that when you have a YouTube channel with 10,000 subscribers? If you review the books in your backlog on your channel, NetGalley would be perfectly happy. Just link to your channel. I haven't done that either. Well, I need to figure this out. NetGalley is this huge Catholic guilt sin weighing on me. If I went to the confessional, it'd be the thing I start with every single week. And the priest would say, "Oh, Faith and Pecora, you still haven't dealt with NetGalley." So I'll have to figure out how to square the books with NetGalley. Then let's see. N is for nonfiction. What percentage of the books you read are nonfiction? It's a lot. 75, 80%, something like that. It's a lot. Not because I don't read much fiction. I actually read a huge amount of fiction, but I read a huge amount of everything. And I read more categories of nonfiction than I do fiction. And more assiduously into the weeds of the smaller publishers. So it's not 50-50. It's not anywhere close. Then N is for the 19th century. What is the last book you read written in the 19th century? This was prompted by something I saw in the TLS, the Times Literary Supplement. I read an article by D.J. Taylor about his rereading during lockdown. And as is true with every article I have read so far, in going on a year now, of articles that people write about the reading that they did in lockdown, it was mostly lies. Most people are making all kinds of litristic essays about that sort of thing, but they're not telling the truth. Most people that I knew during the worst of 2020's lockdowns, which it looks like we're moving right back into, so it'll be old times all over again, in America anyway, because 150 million people in this country don't want to be vaccinated. They don't want a free, completely effective vaccination to a deadly virus. And they don't want the kids to have it either. They don't want anyone to be protected. So, and who knew that you would have that? Who knew that at Republican conventions, the virus, the vaccines that are being produced and given to the citizenry for free, that have an incredibly high effective ratio, would get booed. The virus gets booed, or the vaccines get booed at these Republican conventions. And when the virus is brought up, when someone says COVID-19, the crowd cheers. The virus gets a round of applause. That is simple pathology. And who knew, even after 4 years of Trump, who knew that literally 1/2 of the adults in this country are certifiably insane? That is, of course, untenable, so I'm not hoping for much in the future, but one way or another, we are headed towards a brand new resurgence of COVID-19. Not COVID-20, plain old COVID-19, for which there is a free and universally accessible vaccine that works perfectly. But anyway, DJ Taylor's piece in the TLS mentioned writer vagaries, where a writer who's known for one thing will suddenly write something completely different. And he mentioned the writer vagaries for Anthony Trollope, his book of Caesar's Commentaries and his biography of Cicero. And I went and read his biography of Cicero again. I've read it a couple of times. I went and read it again solely because of that article. So that's the last book that I read that was written in the 19th century. Then N is for Northanger Abbey. Catherine Morland's reading affected how she saw the world. Has your reading affected the way you see the world? In minor ways, in kind of, detailed filling ins here and there, learning the state of nanotechnology, the state of artificial intelligence, the state of refugee life in refugee camps all over the world. Something like half the humans in the world are now displaced people. Stuff like that, filling in the factual groundings here and there, but not in large ways. It's life experiences that alter my view of the world in large ways. N is for notes. Do you make notes when you are reading? Yes, I do. Very much so. Lots of them. If I am reading a glue and paper book, then I have a pencil in hand at all times to make notes. Unfortunately, for years and years, some of you are going to cringe at this, that habit was totally unbreakable, and so it would apply to library books. In my own defense, I know there isn't much of a defense. Most of you are going to consider that to be an excommunicatable offense, but in my own defense, I wasn't just saying, an exclamation point. I was actually making notes. So I have to believe from my own reading experience that those would be of interest to someone who came along. And I always did in pencil. They are removable. But in my own books, ooh, yes. And with ebooks, I don't need it. I don't need a pencil in hand. You can take notes to your heart's content on an ebook and transfer them. You can email them to yourself and send them to yourself. So I notice once again, this says property of Richardson. What is it? Richardson ISD. That is not Mark Richardson. I just want you. Every time I hold this up and see that, I'm reminded of that. The funniness there. I've got some waggish emails on the subject, but the Richardsons, they don't own me lock, stock, and barrel. Okay, the Bean and I love going up there to visit, but I didn't just get a Richardson iPad. I have my eyes on a Richardson iPad. I don't even think it's inscribed. It's a nice big thing. Keep trying to steal it, but their security measures at the old house up there in Vermont have gotten much better in the last few years. I don't know why. Maybe they had a problem of some kind. I can't get it out of the house there. But anyway, I do take notes all the time. Yes, all the time. N is for neurodiversity. A faddish 21st century Twitter term, neurodiversity. So if you have a mental disorder that stops you from getting a job, stops you from sleeping, forces you to repeat the same word 20 times before you can move on to the next word, makes you an outcast at school, in sports, in the world, that's just you being diverse. It's no longer allowable, it's no longer permissible to say that's a handicap. No, because we're all absolutely perfect. Every one of us, in every single way. Every one of us, in every single way, is absolutely perfect without any work or effort at all. So if you are that way, you're just neurodiverse. That's all. Anyway, do any of the protagonists in your reading have a different way of thinking to what might be considered normal? Here, one of the books I read recently is the new Bob Woodward book, Peril. This with help from Bob Costa. He wrote the latest Woodward book is about the transition from Trump to Biden. And as usual, everybody talks to Woodward. It's amazing. They talk to him even when they're incriminating themselves. They still do. And so a great deal of people in what the cable news world refers to as Trump world, a great deal of those people, and I suspect Trump himself, talked to Woodward a great deal for this book. And then a whole bunch of Biden world people did, including Biden. And so in the course of the book, it's impossible to read the book without seeing those two worlds together. and in drawing the only possible inference from the quotes that you're seeing. I'm not talking about Bob Woodward getting on a soapbox. I'm talking about quotes from the people involved. There is no other way to put it other than it is a shift from a crowded clown car of various levels of neurodiversity, various levels of gibbering sociopaths, all in the orbit of a gibbering psychopath. It's a shift from that to ordinary people. Not heroes, just not perfect people, just ordinary people. People who don't think the world is coming to an end when they close their eyes at night. People who don't put their own personal checkbook ahead of the wealth of the country, ahead of the fate of the country, ahead of the system of government of the country. It's just radically different. It's a radically different shift. Ordinary people, if they're doing something that they know is flagrantly illegal, flagrantly immoral, something that has no precedent in American history, then they know it because they've had people tell it to them. Ordinary people who are doing that, in the back of their head, they're thinking, all right, well, there's going to come a reckoning. I'm doing this now. I'm getting away with this now, but now is not forever. Sooner or later, there's going to be some kind of accountability for what I'm doing. Ordinary people think that when they do that, right? If you're, I don't even know of an example. If you're at your job, let's say you have a job. I distantly remember what that was like. Let's say you have a job, and let's say there's, I don't even know, a high-quality scanner, really nice, high-quality scanner in the next cubicle, which has not been filled in a long time. So every day you go to work, you see that high-quality scanner just sitting there. No one's using it, and you could really use it at home. Let's say you have a side hustle where a high-quality scanner would really, really help. And you can't help but notice that the thing would fit in one of your planning satchels. So you wouldn't be carrying it under your arm as you walk out the door. You can't help but notice that, and eventually you decide, well, no one's using this, but if I ask, I'll be told no. So what I'm going to do is unplug this thing and discreetly slip it inside my portfolio and walk out with it. If you do that, I'm not saying that makes you a totally bad person at all. It is an ethical lapse, but it's not a big one, especially since you can bring it back, right? And especially since no one is harmed at all. So I'm not saying it's a major ethical lapse, but it is totally outside the norm, and you know that, which is why you don't just walk out with it under your arm. A normal person who does that, part of their thinking is going to be, I may have to face a reckoning for this down the line. A boss may confront me not only with the question, where is that printer, but also with hidden camera footage that shows me taking it. I may face accountability for this down the line. A normal person thinks that. It may eat away at them. It might mean that they set the printer up at home, they start to use it, and they think, the psychological cost here is too great. I'm going to pack this up and bring it back. Those are the people in the second half of the Woodward book. The people in the first half of the Woodward book are stealing not only that printer, but every printer and every other piece of technology. And the only thought in their mind is, there'll be no accountability because this company is going to go out of business. Millenarian kind of thinking. End of history kind of thinking. I will never be held accountable to this, not because what I'm doing is right, but because there won't be anybody to hold me accountable. It's a market shift. So I'm going to say that. I'll say that. Peril by Bob Woodward. Then N is for next. What is the next book you intend on reading? And I'm going to read this afternoon. It's a forthcoming book. I don't think it comes out until the end of the year. It's called After Jesus, Before Christianity. And it's written by 18 or 19 people. I don't know why I take that. But it's a study of what the book refers to as Jesus movements that took place in the first century before Christianity codified into a religion. What were those movements like? How much can we recover them? Because keep in mind, once Christianity did codify into a religion, its number one priority, far more important than spreading and proselytizing, was to stamp out any mention, any hint that those previous dissensions had ever existed at all. You can't claim any literally God-given morality and moral high ground if there's an abundant record that you are just the survivor of many different sects. Now, instead it has to be that this was an unbroken apostolic succession. So the records were destroyed. Lots of them were. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this book can do on that subject. I know a bit about it, but I'd love to know a lot more. That's the end of the tag proper, and we're at 20 minutes, so we're going to double time this because there are some extra prompts, and they're good. Why shouldn't we do them? I want all of you to do this tag. You should do the extra prompts as well. N is for Nigeria. What is the last book you read set in Nigeria or by a Nigerian author? Here is Jim trying to get me in trouble. He's trying to get me hashtag. He's trying to get me to go on a rant about Nigeria in current year contemporary American literary fiction. And I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to repurpose the question to your favorite. Not the last book, but your favorite. I'm going to say Wole Soyinka. Wole Soyinka is a Nigerian author I really, really, really like. So there. Nice try. Then N is for Noir. N is for North. What do you understand? Hi, baby. Hi, baby bean. What do you understand by North? Once upon a time, I would have had a ready answer for this, but we live on a warming planet. And those of you who are listening to me now, who are 18 to 25, when you are heading towards retirement age, the world in which you retire is not going to look anything like the world you're living in now. That hasn't been true for any generation of human being. Not just my generation. No generation has ever experienced that. The givens, the bedrock pillars of the world, as we have known it, everyone young, older than that, winter, spring, summer, fall, hurricane season, hurricane zones, all that sort of stuff. By the time you reach retirement age, it will be matters of the history books. The very oldest people that you know will reflect back on that sort of thing, because this planet is changing. So I would once have referred to North as, I would have said that I lived in the North. I absolutely don't anymore. Not at all. It's late August here. It's 100 degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to be 100 degrees Fahrenheit for the next 5 days. This was the hottest summer on record for Boston. It beat out the next hottest summer on record, which was last year. That beat out the next hottest summer, which is the year before that. There's no denying any of this. There's no denying any of the data. This is just a warming planet. So now, I mean, there are parts of Siberia that have been on fire for 2 months. There's almost free, unimpeded nautical travel across the poles of this planet that were once not only covered in ice floes, but had permafrost that went down for a long way. That is changing. It will very soon, relatively speaking, an instant in geological terms, it will relatively soon be entirely possible to sail through the Arctic. Water passages will be entirely possible. So now I might say maybe the bitter endmost poles of the planet, but otherwise no. Otherwise no, this planet is changing, is becoming a hot world where there won't be any north to speak of. I mean, not really. So, I mean, like for instance, I guess you could still call Boston north, because although August is going to go out with our 4th heat wave of the year, it's entirely likely that September will experience a small cool down. The tilt of the planet will guarantee that to a certain extent. So, but not anymore. I wouldn't call Boston north anymore. You're far more likely in Boston to die of heat stroke than of frostbite. Then let's see. The next one is Noir. N is for Noir. Who is your favorite writer of noir books? Here, his name's on my mind because he edited an anthology that I just read last night. Philip Kerr, Kerr, the author of the Bernie Gunther novels that I recommended yesterday. Happy to take the opportunity to recommend them again. Find Berlin Noir, the omnibus of early Bernie Gunther novels, and read them. You'll just love it. If you haven't experienced them, you'll have a new favorite when it comes to genre fiction. Then N is for nasty. Is there a character in a book that you found to be nasty? In other words, not out and out evil, just deeply unpleasant. So this is not the same thing as finding the worst character in fiction that you've read. And a name came to mind, very much so, thanks to Jane Austen July, and that's Mr. Collins from Pride and Prejudice, who is the heir of Longbourn. Longbourn is entailed. It cannot go to Mr. Bennet's daughters. It has to go to the nearest male relative. So it's going to Mr. Collins. And he shows up, and he is not outright evil. I would say there are a couple of outright evil characters, or at least one in Pride and Prejudice. Mr. Collins isn't outright evil, but he's totally unpleasant. Just totally nasty. Whether that's because of complete cluelessness, just has no idea how to behave, or because he revels in the little nastinesses that he can get away with. One way or another, whichever explanation it is, he came immediately to mind. Then N is for New Zealand. Have you read any books from New Zealand? Two names sprang immediately to mind, not only Catherine Mansfield, who's known for her fiction, but her nonfiction is incredible. Her nonfiction is amazing, including her book writing. The writing that she did in my own profession, she's great at it. But also NetGalley Marsh, one of the greatest mystery writers of all time, whose books really, really repay rereading. They really, really do. These ladies from the golden age of murder mysteries, they really knew how to put together a narrative that wasn't just about the big reveal at the end. I love NetGalley Marsh's novels, just love them. And she's from New Zealand, I believe. That's just two. I'm sure there are plenty of others. Then N is for novel or novella. What length of book are you most comfortable reading? Most comfortable would be 800 pages or more. I am a very, very fast reader. That's not me hurrying. That's just the speed I read at. I'm a very fast reader. But like everyone else, all of you, I love the feeling of so-called getting lost in a book. I love that feeling. But when you're a very fast reader, you don't get lost in a book. It's over before you can even turn around. Unlike what a lot of people who over the years have emailed me have thought, it's not reading critically that does that. It's the length of the book. I can still get lost in a book and read it critically. Absolutely. But the last short book I read that actually captivated me, I can't say I got lost in it because I rocketed right through it in one sitting, was Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. That totally captured me. But it was over in an hour. I read very fast, so longer the better. A very long book that needs to be that long. So not just someone padding, just word diarrhea, just endlessly writing, but something that can justify its own length, where you wouldn't want it to be any shorter. Then N is for nature. Do you have any favorite nature writers or books about nature? I believe I've done a nature writing starter kit. I could go on for 2 hours about favorite nature and nature writing books, but 2-hour video would defeat the purpose of this challenge, right? We're nudging 30 minutes as it is. So instead of picking favorites, which will go on forever, I'm going to pick my most recent favorite, a book I've mentioned on this channel before. I strongly recommend it. It's Catherine Raven's book, Fascinate, about a woman who gets fed up with humanity for a whole bunch of different reasons. I'm sure a lot of you can identify with that, and goes to the wilderness of Montana and notices that every day she is visited by a wild fox. Wild fox doesn't end up rolling on her belly. They don't become buddies in any kind of unrealistic Hollywood way, but they do get to know each other. They do become friends. Even though the fox is always wild and she is always domesticated, they do become friends, and it's amazingly well done. It's just an amazing. I'm sure you recognize the pattern, right? That's a very familiar pattern in nature writing. There are many, many books that do that, where someone either takes a wild animal into their home, or meets a wild animal on their own terms, and eventually a relationship develops. There's nothing wrong with it being a familiar formula. As we say so often in this little corner of BookTube, it's all about how you execute it. And Fascinate is wonderfully done. So I strongly recommend it. I can end this tag on a strong recommend. So there you go. That is the end tag in under 30 minutes. Not what I was hoping for. I was hoping for 15. Maybe I'm not capable of doing a tag in 15 minutes, but under 30 minutes, I'll definitely take it. So that's the end tag. All that would be left to do is tag people typically, but I've started just tagging everybody. I want everybody to do every tag. They're all so fascinating. I learn so much. I'm jotting things down when I watch you make tags of any kind. And I learn a lot about you when you do a more personal tag, like, for instance, your answer can't be books, which has gone viral. I love it either way, so I want everybody to do this, and I thank Jim for continuing with this series. The next one is O. I think that might challenge him, but you never know. He surprised me before. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.